Why did humans invent kings? You see, every king who ever ruled from the pharaohs of Egypt to the emperors of China existed because early humans faced one problem they couldn't solve alone. Long before kingdoms covered maps, human groups were small enough to survive on memory, custom, and face-to-face trust. But once farming created surplus, villages became towns, towns became cities, and cities became crowded with grain, trade, and conflict. Scholars of early civilization argue that the rise of states went together with economies that could produce surplus and governments that could protect it. Other research stresses that hierarchy grew as agriculture intensified, people became more sedentary, and land had to be defended from outsiders. That is why kingship appeared to manage these complexities. Ancient Mesopotamia, around 3400 to 3000 BC, was one of the first places where urban civilization, bureaucracy, writing, and organized religion all emerged together. In that world, rulers were not just chiefs with nicer clothes. They were the people expected to coordinate labor, collect tribute, settle disputes, and organize the city's survival. Even earlier, before 3000 BC, Assyrian and Mesopotamian imagery already shows priest kings in scenes of power and ritual, which suggests that rule was tied to both violence and sacred authority from the beginning. Think about this as a job description. Someone had to store grain when the harvest was good. Someone had to decide who used the canal water first. Someone had to command defenders when raiders came over the horizon. In Egypt, river agriculture created especially large surpluses, and those surpluses helped form large kingdoms that were eventually unified. In other words, kings were not just symbols, they were solutions to the problem of scale. Once a society became too large for one family table and too complex for gossip to manage, centralized authority became useful and necessary. By the time Egypt developed its mature kingship, the office had become deeply sacred. The Metropolitan Museum notes that Egyptian kings were not exactly thought of as gods themselves, but the power of kingship was treated as divine. The living king was associated with Horus, and the dead king with Osiris. That mattered because religion made obedience feel natural. If the king was linked to cosmic order, then obeying the king was not only political, it was moral. Egypt's royal system also became hereditary, with succession usually passing from father to son, which helped turn kingship from a temporary leadership role into a permanent institution. Mesopotamia shows the other side of the story, kings as hard power rulers. In the old Assyrian period, Ashur was an economically strong city-state trading between powerful neighbors, and later rulers such as Shamshi-Adad and Hammurabi expanded control by unifying wider regions under one authority. That is a key reason kings survived. They could scale up. A village elder could lead one community, but an expanding city-state needed an army, courts, messengers, and administrators. The king became the human center of a machine for organizing land, labor, and war. Yet kingship was never just about force. It also needed legitimacy. In Zhou China, after the conquest of the Shang around 1050 BC, the new rulers said a king could rule only if he had heaven's favor. That idea, known as the mandate of heaven, was brilliant because it both strengthened kingship and limited it. A king was powerful but not untouchable. If he became immoral or ineffective, his right to rule could be questioned. That is one of history's smartest political inventions, giving a ruler sacred authority while also giving society a reason to replace him. And that is the strange truth about kings. They brought order, continuity, and the ability to build roads, store grain, raise armies, and unite thousands or millions of strangers under one banner. But they also concentrated power, widened inequality, and made it easier for one family to control what many people produced. The same crown that promised stability could also become a tool of domination. That tension is probably why kingship lasted so long. It solved real problems, but never stopped creating new ones. So humans did not invent kings in one single moment. Kings emerged as societies got larger, richer, more violent, and more complicated. In every civilization, the crown meant the same thing. Somebody had to speak for the whole society, even if the whole society never fully agreed to it. And maybe that is the real origin of king. Not a love of power, but the fear of chaos.